All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome and hope everyone is doing lovely this Wednesday evening. I am Lola Pine, and I am honored to serve as the Economic Empowerment Committee Chair for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Metropolitan Washington, D.C. chapter. And so, on behalf of our chapter president, Eris Scales, welcome to this evening session, and thank you so much for being here. So, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women has a long and rich history of advocacy on behalf of Black women and girls. And we have a specific focus in the areas of health, education, and economic empowerment. NCBW uses a mix of policy change making activities and community based initiatives to address specific issues and drive changes in these three main areas. So, just last week, our chapter hosted Advocacy Day at the Wilson Building, meeting with council members and officials to champion policies that uplift Black women and girls in the district. It was a wonderful event where our members were able to engage with lawmakers. And so now, under the community arm of our work, we are so pleased to host this Wealthy Wednesday event this evening as part of our overarching Sisternomics education series, which is programming that addresses topics such as financial literacy, family wealth building, entrepreneurship, and things that promote economic self-sufficiency and economic empowerment. Especially in times like these, right? It is critical that we level up our financial knowledge and skill to take care of our financial health, to make sure our financial houses are in order for ourselves, for our families, and for our futures. And so with that, I am pleased to turn over this evening's program to Lisa Mays, who's the chair of our Wealthy Wednesdays programming. She's going to tell you a little bit more about the series and tonight's speaker as we get into what everyone is here for, the topic of the night, financial planning. So thank you, and turning it over to you, Lisa.
All right. Thank you, Sister Lola. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Mays, and I have the privilege to introduce our speaker for the evening. So I'm going to introduce Miss Danielle Thompson. So since 2006, Danielle has been creating financial strategies for her clients. Danielle works with a client base comprised of individuals, nonprofit organizations, public school employees, and business owners. She earned her bachelor's degree in finance from Howard University, woo woo, in DC. She's also a graduate of the master's program from Howard University, gaining her degree in business administration with a concentration in finance. In joining her organization, the TPS Financial family, in 2014, Danielle established her qualifications in retirement planning. With the focus of retirement benefits, Danielle helps her clients ensure their financial future with proactive strategies regarding their present income stream and continuation of funds after retirement. Danielle is committed to excellence in her customer service for her individual clients and their employers. She works with them diligently to achieve their financial goals. She holds her FINRA Series 6, 7, 63, and 65. As an investment advisor, she is licensed in Maryland, DC, Virginia, and Michigan. Danielle is an avid volunteer in the DC area, and she enjoys traveling with her husband, Brandon, and participates in community activities with her sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And with that, please help me virtually welcome Miss Danielle Thompson.
Hello, hello. How's everyone? Thank you guys so much for having me. That was a wonderful introduction, Lisa. I am honored to be here and present to you ladies tonight. So I am going to discuss financial planning and some things that women really should do to kind of help empower themselves financially, to have their plan and know their plan. So before I share my screen and start the presentation, I do want to just welcome questions. I know sometimes, I will open the floor for questions at the end of the presentation. But sometimes if something pops up, we're on slide 3. You may not want to wait all the way to the end. So just feel free if you have a question to go ahead and drop it in the chat. Even if it makes sense for us to keep going, we will certainly circle back to it because I am truly passionate about making sure women are engaged as it relates to their finances. So I don't want to leave any question or comment unaddressed tonight. All right. So let's get started here. All righty. So again, I am Danielle Thompson, and I am a partner with TPS Financial, also a financial advisor. And so what we're going to talk about really is owning your own financial journey. Let me just see if I can. All right, go to the next slide. All right. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for your time. Time is our truly most valuable resource where we spend it. And so first and foremost, I'd like everyone to give themselves a virtual pat on the back for carving some time out on this Wednesday evening to participate in this event. This already shows you where your core values are and what is important to you just by being here. So, we want to talk about what is happening in this country and how women are being empowered to take control of their own finances. The number of households with women breadwinners has tripled since 1972, right? And we see that because we see so many more women entering the workforce on a full-time level, but also we see a higher degree of educated women with undergraduate and graduate degrees. And I'm happy to share that the largest number of folks who are graduating from college are Black women in this country. We are leading that demographic. And so with that comes more access to significant resources. So let's take a look at this. So, despite seeing all this significant growth with women in terms of being breadwinners, making more income, having more resources to capital, only about a third of women feel really confident when it comes to making financial decisions. And that's really a significant, I think, an alarming number, right? So most of us don't feel comfortable making financial decisions. So if you fall into the 2/3 of us that check off the box as being uneasy, right? This is the first step. Again, you prioritizing today, you putting this on your calendar and making it happen, that's step one. So you're here, you're motivated to learn how to plan for your financial future. So let's get into investing, right? When we talk about investing, the easiest way and the way most people are most confident or just is like the default easy way to invest is really through your employer sponsored retirement plan, right? So a lot of times that will look like a 401k, something like a TSP if you work for the federal government, or if you work for a local government or municipality, that could be a 457. You work for a public school district or a nonprofit, that could be a 403B. And then on your own, you might have a Roth IRA or an IRA, right? So that's kind of that default setup. I have one of those accounts and I know for sure I'm investing in there. I don't know what it is, right? Maybe, but I know that I'm doing some investments, right? Well, this is a really interesting fact. 90% of women are investing outside of their retirement account. And that's really uncommon, shockingly, when we compare that to our male counterparts, right? So 90% of women are saying, hey, I know that I need to be building a portfolio outside of my retirement assets. And so when we start to think about what type of things do I need to know when I'm starting to build out any type of investment plan for myself, or when I'm starting to think about organizing my financial plan, what do I start with? And first step is knowing, right? Knowing what you have. And sometimes when we say this, it seems a little bit shocking, but you would be surprised how many people don't even know what their annual salary is. They know what gets deposited in their checking account every 2 weeks, but they don't really know their income or what's going to happen next year. Are they slated to get a raise or any of these things? So step one is knowing what are your daily expenses, right? Who here knows what they've spent today? Any round figures, right? I For me, I think I spent today, it's about 150 bucks. I know I filled up my car. I know I went to lunch. I picked up some things for my kids' school. These are things that we need to really be aware of, right? And so it's great to have a monthly budget, which is very much needed, but we need to have kind of our hand on the nose of what's happening daily, right? If I spent 500 bucks today, whoa, that's not really a part of my goals, right? That's not what I want to do. So understanding like what your daily expenses are. Second thing is an emergency fund. Do you have an emergency fund? This is probably the most overlooked item in any financial plan. Most people, and that number is really honestly in America, around about 3% of Americans have an emergency fund. So that is something that is critical to having any type of solid plan. And we're going to dig deeper on that, but investing, right? Are you investing? If so, what are you investing in and why? And then are you saving? Emergency fund, investing, saving, those are three different things that often get looped together into one. Okay. And then how are you spending your money? What does that look like, right? It is so easy in this era to click and spend, to do all of that on Amazon, Target, Walmart, all of these, companies that we should really be moving away from. But how are you spending your money? So these are some things that you want to begin to take intake of. Just want to check the chat. Awesome. Okay, wonderful. I see we've got some figures. Somebody spent, okay, 21 at work, 75 at Target. So there we go. Good stuff. So, when we start to build out these plans, right, and do that initial intake of what am I spending? What are my expenses? What do I have in savings? One of the things that we see, and we've gotten a lot of just general feedback on as we take kind of uh, get insight from people who've worked with financial planners and financial professionals is a lot of times that happens as a couple. And so you and your partner may go into speak with a financial advisor, but a lot of times the feedback that has been heard within the industry is far too often one person leads that discussion. Right. And 9 times out of 10, if it is a man in the room, it happens to be the man. The man is taking the lead on what the finances are, what the expenses are, what the hopes, dreams of the couple is. It far too often we find many times the woman tends to sit back and to defer to that spouse or partner. But the reason why this is so critical, if there are folks on the chat who can relate to that type of experience, is at the end of the day, no one knows your goals, your dreams, your hopes, your aspirations better than you. And no one is more well equipped to communicate those goals better than yourself. So I really feel very strongly that it is important in every scenario, even if you're someone who's more quiet or maybe you don't feel as confident, you want to be an active player in the room. You want to engage in the conversation and you want to be open about where you are financially and really what you want to see. Because sometimes there are scenarios where our partner's vision may not be ours. So let's get into some benefits of owning your financial journey. What does that look like? Why should I be engaged? If I just defer to whomever, right, to my partner, they know what's going on. Well, there are actual benefits for women to be engaged. The first is confidence, right? When you know what is going on, what's coming in, what's coming out, what we're saving, what we're investing, what our investment strategy is, what assets do we have stocks? Do we have bonds? Do we have mutual funds? Do we need ETFs? Any of these type of things that you want to dig deeper with a financial professional, right? It allows you to have confidence in your financial plan. Many times I sit down with women who have deferred to their spouse, and we're talking about, a lot of times outside of your home and can exceed the value of your home, your investment portfolio is your most significant asset. So you need to feel really confident that you know what you hold and why. So that's the first benefit. A significant amount of confidence can come from really engaging. The second thing always makes me chuckle a little bit because I see so much apprehension around understanding a financial portfolio and fully investing, fully engaging. But one of the things that we see is it lowers stress levels, right? So in my personal experience, what I find is women are phenomenal when it comes to committing to a financial plan. They are absolutely phenomenal in investing and saving appropriately and really not deferring from that plan, right? And so when that happens, a lot of times I can sit down with folks and they have all this anxiety around retirement is a big one. What are they putting away? Are they saving? Are they investing appropriately? But when we sit down and pull the layers back and look at the accounts and look at the investment strategy, a lot of times they are certainly on track or exceeding the ability to be on track. And so we find the stress and the angst around financial planning comes down because they have a thorough understanding. And that also ties into those factors of being confident. So the next one is strengthened financial relationships, right? If you are confident and you have an understanding of your financial plan by working with a financial professional, right? Now you've got a relationship with someone who knows your plan. They know your goals, right? So they can kind of come to you and say, hey, I saw this and I thought of you, right? I know that your plan is to go to Africa for 3 months in the spring of 2026. That's a goal for you. I'm looking at some investments. I'm looking at CDs or high yield interest rates. There are some things I think that we can do differently, right? It is so important to have a relationship with someone who has the pulse on what is going on financially in the industry, and they can kind of loop you in and bring you in, right? When they know your goals and really what you're trying to hit in your vision, right, for your life and things financially. And then a big one is the ability to have a portfolio that lasts longer because of diversification. So, what this really means, and there are some misconceptions I have found around diversification and what that means, right? So, a lot of times Folks thinks diversification is having a bunch of different accounts, right? Oh, I've got an account with Equitable. I have an account with Morgan Stanley. I have an account with Fidelity and Vanguard. And so my portfolio is diverse. That is not what diversification means. Diversification really means that the assets in those accounts are invested diversely, right? So, for example, you or don't have the same concentration of investments because in that example, right, you can have 4 or 5 different accounts with all those financial institutions, but if you are invested the same way in every single account, if you're in a general mutual fund like a large cap index and you've got that at Morgan Stanley, you've got that at Equitable, you've got that at Vanguard, what happens when the market drops, right? You're taking a hit across the board. When you are doing financial planning and you're working with someone, right? Understanding the entire portfolio that you have and then making sure those funds are well diversified so that you have investments in different sectors of the market. You have things in technology, you may have oil and gas, you may have real estate, you may have durable goods. So all of those different sectors is what diversifies your portfolio, not having a bunch of accounts. And what we see is when we study diverse portfolios over a long period of time, and what we consider a long period of time is a minimum of 10 years, we see that folks who have a diversified portfolio have assets that last them for a much longer time than those who only invest in one asset class. So as we start to pull the layers back of financial planning and we start to kind of take stock of what you have and what you don't have, understanding those principles of diversification as it relates to investments are really important. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. So understanding how to structure your finances, right? What does that look like? So spend a little time talking about spending, right? What is that daily number? What is that monthly number? What am I spending? And then when we break down spending, right? What is a necessity, right? Obviously my mortgage or my rent, my housing costs. What is a need? What is a want? What is the difference between those two? And then saving and investing. These are two different things, right? And what are the benefits of both? You know, oftentimes these are lumped together, but savings really is looking at putting away something like an emergency fund, which can typically be done in a savings account or a high yield interest account. Those can fall under the same umbrella. It's important where interest rates are and things like that. But then investing happens outside of those accounts. And that really falls under the barometer of an investment account, a brokerage account, and any investing that we would do in a retirement account. Also, investment vehicles like 529 and college savings plans are a wonderful way to layer on our different investments. So I see a question, which is great. I'm going to pause here because we are talking about saving. So thank you, Ashley. Where is the best place to keep emergency funds so that they are growing and easy to access when necessary? Wonderful. So emergency funds should be somewhere liquid. They should not be tied up in any long-term vehicle or something that even has any parameters around where you access it, right? Or how. So typically with long term, with your saving, right? You want to do that in a financial institution like a regular bank or through a online institution that tends to have those high yield savings accounts. Those are the primary ways you want to use your savings account. When we are talking about emergency savings, that means, God forbid, the payroll system at your company fails and or you're hit by a bus and you're immediately out of work, we need you to be able to go and get your hands on capital without a long wait time. So again, that is where we would use that basic first line of defense of just a regular financial institution like a bank, and then layering in high yield savings. Now, sometimes with high yield savings, some of the accounts do have some parameters surrounding it, as it relates to how you can access it, especially if you're looking at some type of high yield CD. But that's something that you want to make sure that you look at before you get into those. But generally speaking, high yield savings and just a traditional savings account at your bank can help.
Danielle, you have one more question in the chat. It says, would you advise that we prioritize building our savings and emergency fund before attempting to invest, or do them all in tandem?
That's a great question. I'm sorry I missed that, Miranda. So thank you so much. Yeah, so that's a really strong, a great question. I get it quite frequently. Let me ask this. Does anyone know how much you should have in your emergency savings? So rule of thumb, oh, perfect, Chanel. Yep. 6 months, 10,000, 3 to 6 months. Wonderful, wonderful. So you guys are right on the nose of what you should have. So let's kind of get into this, right? So it is generally recommended that you should have anywhere between 3 to 8 months of liquid savings in your bank account. Okay. So that can be a pretty significant number. I like right in the middle. I recommend 6 months of savings. One of the things that we see, and I steer away from 3, is it realistically right now in this economy, and especially in this area with so many things taking place with layoffs and terminations and all these things, we are finding that if unemployment happens, 3 months is just not enough time. You can exhaust your emergency savings. So really 6 months is that example, right? Is the perfect kind of fail-proof scenario. And I always tell people, if you are in a career path that is very unique, if you're like a microbiologist or something where there is not a tremendously high demand for your profession, we want to push that number closer to 8 months, right? So for example, what does that look like? So if you have monthly expenses of $4,000, right? And you want to be honest with your monthly expenses, right? You want to be realistic that you are probably not going to start eating beans and rice as soon as you are terminated from your job, or you lose your job. So if we're looking at a situation where we've got a monthly expenses of $4,000, that means that's $24,000, right? That we need to have in a liquid savings. Of that 24,000, it is my recommendation that 10% of that be kept in a savings account at your bank, meaning you can walk to that bank, you can get to that bank, and you can access capital that day. The other 90% should be kept in a high yield savings account. If it is with that same bank, they're competitive, that's wonderful. If it is not, if it's with an online institution, we know that sometimes it's going to take 3 to 5 days to get funds in your checking account. So Miranda asked, and this is a long way of getting to answering your question. How do I do that, right? How do I save, in this example, $24,000 and save for retirement? Do I tear that off first? They must be done in tandem, right? They absolutely must, because I don't want you to spend so much time trying to save 6 months worth of expenses that you are not investing, you are not saving for retirement, you are not doing any of the other things that may need to be done in your financial wheelhouse. So it is about creating a plan where you are hitting each one, a diversified plan. We're putting a little bit in every section of your financial wheelhouse. Okay. So By doing all these things, right, you will be able to make informed financial decisions. And that is so key, right? That just like in this example that we just used, right? We know we've got to have at least 6 months worth of savings in our liquid savings. We know we need to be saving for this, maybe a kid's college education, maybe retirement planning. So it will allow us to really prioritize how we need to rank those things, and ultimately achieving long-term financial goals. That's ultimately the goal. So, you can have the best financial plan, and you can stick to your plan and you can invest and you can do all of these things. But having conversations and communication around your personal finances is so important if you are in a couple, if you're a couple, if you have a partner or if you're married, um, you know, the best financial plan can really be ruined when you are partnered with someone who sees things totally different and has no kind of respect for the plan that you want to put in place. So it is really important that if you are have a partner or you're married, that you guys are having a regular discussion about your finances, your financial goals, who is responsible for what financially. And I recommend that you have them like a quarterly business meeting. So this is a really cool statistic because when we do all these analyst reports, we find that women are overwhelmingly honest, and are really open to and receptive to like not knowing things and are okay with that. And so we know that about 2/3 of women really want to improve their money management skills. So, if you are one of those 2/3 of people, right, who want to improve your money management skills, let's look at 4 steps that we can take to do so. Step one, take stock of what you know and what you don't know, right? I said earlier, you would be surprised how many people don't know what their annual salary is. Um, so when we talk about taking stock of things that we know and we don't know, that means what is my monthly income and what does that daily figure look like, right? What is a ballpark range that I know as I'm out shaking and moving, living my life, that I need to stay around in terms of my daily spending? Um, so also, what accounts do I have? What do I have? What do I not have? Have I left any former retirement plans in the past? I don't know where they are. I don't know how they're invested. So that's kind of what that would look like. I want to use the example of Marjorie. So Marjorie is recently widowed and she does not feel confident about her finances. Very interesting, just to interject some personal experience here. I find very often, and this tends to happen a lot of times with my baby boomers or older widowed women, but a lot of times um, they just did not know the full picture of what was going on financially. And sometimes a different generation, a different era of things happening. But a lot of times I find many widows, female widows, feel very, very unsure about their next steps, don't know about their accounts, don't even know things like how reoccurring bills were paid, if they were paid online or they were paid by check, or what is the mortgage or things like that. So in this example, she is worried that she'll be making the wrong decisions and end up struggling. But also, she knows she's got assets and she wants to help her niece and nephew pay for school. Feels overwhelmed and really is not sure where to start. So, if that resonates with anyone, these are some questions in this specific example you would want to ask. Am I comfortable with important financial topics like market volatility? diversification, and compound interest. Market volatility is the market moving, right? There are some investments that are going to move, and when that means go up and down, have a lot of volatility more than others, right? Do I understand that? And what level of that am I really comfortable with? Diversification, we spent some time on about different asset classes. And then compound interest, right? How is my interest compounded at my bank versus in money that I have that is fixed in my investments? Is it daily? Is it monthly? What does that look like? Do I understand why trying to time the market is not a good idea? Timing the market means when you think the market is going to drop, you sell. And when you think it's on the way back up, you buy back in, right? We found over time that it is really better to be consistent to your long-term plan versus timing the market. And then how can different investment types help or hinder my short-term and long-term planning? So these topics right here are pretty significant, right? This is not for the novice. In this scenario, and if this is something that resonates with you, we really want you to seek guidance to better understand the concepts of market volatility, market timing, diversification, and so on. So let's look, Let's look at step 2, which is assessing your financial priorities, right? So we all have goals. We all want to do things with our money, but we need to prioritize which is important, right? If you have kids, and a lot of times parents feel that it is their priority to pay for their kids' college education, right? Or a lot of folks want to leave a legacy. People may want to take their family on a trip to Kenya, right? All of these wonderful things that can be made, that can happen, but how do we prioritize what is the most significant? So let's look in this scenario, and let's look at Barbara. Barbara is making college tuition payments. She wants to save and she's saving for a vacation. She also wants to pay off her mortgage and buy a second home. And then she's saving for retirement, and she's interested in legacy planning. Legacy planning is planning for future generations to come. We find that for most women, this is really a key thing that they would like to do, pass generational wealth forward. And so we see like this wheelhouse, there's so much going on in our lives. There's so many things that we want to do and be able to participate in. And a lot of that requires a financial commitment. So how do we prioritize these things? So we would start, for folks, if this resonates with you, we would start by asking, what is the time horizon for each goal? I hear a lot of interesting things in this profession. And so I sometimes sit down with folks and they say, I absolutely want to leave my family a significant amount of assets, right? And I want a life insurance policy that's going to make my child a millionaire, and I'm willing to commit to that, right? But they're not saving for their retirement, right? So it is peeling off what is a priority, right? If we're just bequeathing someone a lot of money in the future, but they had to care for you the last 10 years of your life, we're just getting them back to even, right? And so sometimes it is important to know that, you have to be self-sufficient in your golden years. And that is a tool that sometimes we don't always see as something that empowers the next generation, but for those who are in the sandwich generation and maybe taking care of an aging parent and a family, that's a significant one, right? So we want to be realistic in what we can do and really tier off and prioritize what's most significant. And then we want to understand what resources do I have dedicated to those priorities? Because we can have a lot of things, right? But sometimes we have to make some difficult choices around what we can actually fund. We'd love to take, a family of 10 to Kenya, but realistically, it might be more important to make sure that you are putting some things aside in a 529 plan for kids and saving for your own, retirement to be financially stable. Um, if I have to choose between things, I'd like to do so. How can I adjust my approach? What kind of things can we pull back on and fund differently that will allow you to still do the things that you want to do? And then what strategies would best meet my short-term goals and my long-term goals? How do you balance them, right? We know that we've got to prepare for things in the future, but we also want to enjoy life and be able to partake in some of the things that we want to do as well along the way. So step 3 is planning for the known and the unknown. So let's look at Jackie. Jackie, and then I'm sorry, let's see. And I see a question in the chat, and I'm going to get back to it shortly, Miranda. Jackie has young children, one with special needs, a spouse who works for a startup, and is worried about covering the basics as well as possible unexpected costs. And is also trying to balance saving and planning for the future. So there are folks here who can kind of relate to that. Here would be some questions to ask yourself, right? That 6-month number is coming up again. How much accessible money would I need to be able to pay the bills for 6 months, right? That is really the magic number. Most folks are not in a jam for too much longer than 6 months. Not saying that it cannot happen, but certainly that tends to be the sweet spot. How would a change in my family dynamic impact my financial circumstances and goals? This is a significant one. What happens to the partner if he is in an accident or hit by a bus and has exorbitant medical bills and can no longer work? Is there disability insurance, right? A lot of times we find for folks who are self-employed, they don't have those things, right? They're not getting that automatic benefit package. So what would that look like if things all fell on one person? What provisions do I have made if I pass away or become disabled? And this is so significant, especially for anyone, but especially when you have young children. Do you have a will? Do you have a need for a trust? I know you guys are having your next Wednesday session with an estate attorney to get into those things, but financial planning and estate planning really truly go tandem together. So that is something that I would urge every single person to do, especially if you have anyone dependent on your income, that you make sure you have a will and a plan in the event that something will happen to you unexpectedly. And then this is a great one, right? What would I do with an inheritance if I were the beneficiary of a loved one's will, right? And so that's really an important question, because what we are experiencing and going to continue to experience in the next 10 to 15 years is something that is called the greatest wealth transfer of all of American history. The baby boomers, which is the largest generation, will be passing forward a significant amount of assets, ideally to Gen X and millennial generations younger. And so that is a very common theme that we are starting to see come up more, that folks are inheriting assets, right? And what is the plan around them? How do you mitigate tax liability? And how do they kind of help to solve the financial concerns that you may have? Would someone mind reading the question in the chat? I don't think I can go back to it without, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, got it. Miranda, it said, going back to your suggestion to put 90% of our savings in a high yield account, won't we need to pay taxes on that interest? That's a great question. Yes, absolutely. You will need to pay taxes on that interest. And you will get a 1099 at tax time for that. Now, this is a thing. There is nothing we can do, unfortunately, to mitigate that tax liability. And although banking, there is primarily transactional in our checking and savings accounts, you get a statement every year from your financial institutions, like your banks, that show you how much you have paid and what is taxable on that. Okay, so that is something that you do want to be aware of. But I tell people this, right? Growing assets means there's going to be some increased tax liability. Still, that does not outweigh the benefit of growing those assets. We don't want that money sitting in a savings account. 90% of your 6 months of expenses making 1%, right? So step 4, put a plan together that works for you. So what does that look like, right? Let's be realistic, okay? Sometimes I sit down with people and they'll feel really motivated after hearing these type of seminars or conversations, and they say, Danielle, I want to save $1,000 a month. I can do it. And 60 days later, it's something that's extremely unrealistic for them potentially, right? And so then they kind of get a little depressed about it and lose their way. Don't want that to happen. I want you guys to take an intake of what you have and build out a plan that is realistic, okay? So what does that look like? Let's look at Tina. Tina is retiring from her job of 30 years. She wants to travel with her partner, and she's considering consulting as a second act because she wants to remain engaged. She needs to consider benefits changes, right? When you retire, you're losing that health insurance a lot of times to the employer and a host of other benefits. And she's also worried about drawing on retirement savings too soon. I want to talk about this for a little bit, right? Because I am a big proponent of being very aggressive when it comes to your retirement savings. And what I mean by that is contributing and funding those accounts heavily. First and foremost, because if you work for a for-profit company, there is probably some type of match. So that is free money that is there that you are able to get. But secondly, when we look at when Social Security was created in the 1930s, and pensions, and when people would retire, right? On average, 12 years was the time spent in retirement, right? So that means if you were to have retired at 60 back in the 30s and 40s, you would have lived until 62 on average, and then you would pass away. So, you know, you weren't spending a significant amount of time in retirement. And so the vehicles that were set up that you were saving, maybe 4 or 5%, you were getting your Social Security, they were enough to fund your retirement. What we see now is someone can work a career for 30 years, retire at 60, and spend 30 years in retirement. It is very common for folks to live well into their late 80s and 90s. I'm sure as many of you know. I would love to know how many folks in the chat have had a loved one live over the age of 90. I can think of about 6 in my family personally. And so when we talk about concerns about drawing retirement too soon, that's a very valid one. A lot of retirement vehicles are not meant to be in place for 20, 30 years like they are now. So these are some questions you want to ask yourself if this scenario relates to you. What do I want my retirement to look like, right? Do I want to get up every day and do whatever I want to do? Or do I want to work a little, on a flexible basis, 2 or 3 days a week. How will my decision to step back from my job impact my planning? Not going to be able to save or invest or do certain things at the same level. Real important one. How does my plan account for withdrawals? Are they taxed? Are they taxed at ordinary income? Are they taxed at investment gains? Is it a Roth? Is there no tax liability, right? Am I well positioned for unexpected expenses or market fluctuations? So in retirement, most frequently people transition to a monthly income. Most folks are paid biweekly, right? So going from getting 26 paychecks a year to 12 can be a transition for people. So making sure that you are prepared for unexpected expenses. And then am I eligible for Social Security and Medicare? And if not, when do I become eligible? So, we've looked at quite a few different scenarios. We have looked at someone with young children. We've looked at someone who was in the widow stage of life, someone who was going to retire, and someone who had kids in college, right? The key is all of these very vastly different scenarios, but at no point is it too late to understand and implement a financial plan. I want to make sure that everyone feels really confident about that. It does not matter where you are in your journey. If you have saved, $200,000, or if you're $200,000 in credit card debt, step one is starting. And so just as every woman is different, we've all got our own unique ways. Every plan should be different too. Don't let any figures, anything kind of be intimidating to you. Know that we can build out something that works for every single person. So I want this to empower you to be in control of your own financial future. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I am, again, Danielle Thompson. I will certainly open up the floor for questions, comments, concerns. So feel free if someone wants to come off mute, or if they want to post something in the chat. If there was something that I needed to, feel like you need me to provide a little bit more clarity on, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or just raise your hand and I'll allow you to come off mute to ask Danielle any outstanding questions you may have.
Thank you, Chanel.
Hello, good evening. I wanted to know what your take is on IULs. I've been seeing that a lot, and I wanted to know, like, in comparison to other retirement and life insurance, where you think IUL places.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's so interesting because sometimes I know people see stuff on Instagram or TikTok or any other various social media platform, and sometimes it is difficult to understand the validity of those. So for folks who do not know, an IUL is an index universal life insurance policy, and there are many different types of life insurance policies. We, generally speaking, I say this in the Black community, most frequently know two, which is term and whole, but there are many more. And so IULs fall under something that is considered permanent life insurance coverage. They work essentially in two ways. They give you life insurance coverage, but they also serve as an investment. So you've got to have a tolerance for being in the market. But IULs are linked to an index or indices of the market. And essentially, After you hold them for a significant amount of time, you can withdraw from those policies without creating a taxable event. IULs can be absolutely wonderful for the right person, right? And generally speaking, this is the thing about IULs, right? We need to be concerned about your future taxable income, right? So the thought is that in the future, you will be in a higher tax bracket. And so we want to be concerned about not creating a taxable event for you. The thing about IULs that's also really important is you have to have a disposable income for them. They are essentially generated for folks who have a significant amount of disposable income to contribute. And they are very different from an investment account or a brokerage or 401k or anything like that, because it's an agreement, right? If you say you're going to fund this at $500 a month, there's not a significant amount of flexibility with them. So you've got to make sure that it is something that you have the time horizon for, and then are comfortable with the level of market volatility, are concerned about your taxable income in the future. And also know that they're not super liquid, right? All of these different tools, financial tools, fill a different need, right? So again, it is not like a retirement account where you could easily borrow from it or something that you get in a jam. You really want to be very confident that you're going to be able to uphold your end of the bargain. And that's really based on whatever that monthly funding level is for our 10 years, 20 years, you know what I mean? Or a lot of times they go to age 60 or 65.
Thank you.
Okay, I see one about, I think it's from Amon. Is there a specific savings account that I could use to lower tax liability but still gain interest? So in terms of a savings account, no, there is not. That you could just put money in that would lower your tax liability. The easiest way to lower tax liability is to contribute to a pre-tax retirement plan, like a 401k, a deferred compensation plan, a 403b, or a TSP. All of those are based on who your employer is, but most of employer-sponsored plans begin with the number 4. So, that is the easiest way you can do that. Now, within that account, right, if you are concerned about not taking on a lot of risk, you can certainly invest conservatively, and sometimes there will be fixed investments, but it's not a savings account. So it is tied into retirement. And so you just want to be aware and cognizant there. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. You're welcome. Any other thoughts, questions? Well, it has been a pleasure. I thank you guys for taking the time out to be a part of the evening. If there is something that crosses your mind, feel free. My contact information is on the screen, so please feel free to reach out with any questions, thoughts, or concerns.
Great. A couple admin items before we wrap up this evening. We do have a link to our survey. It's very important that you all give us some feedback. So we have a link to our survey here in the chat. And then also a replay of this will be posted to our YouTube shortly. So please feel free to access that in about a week or so. And then finally, I just do want to thank Ms. Danielle for this enlightening discussion. This was truly needed, and I'm sure everyone took so much from this. And thank you once again. Good evening, everyone, and that will conclude our session. Thank you.